Hey everyone, welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for August 10th, 2021. As always, I'm Abram Pelch, Editor-in-Chief of Tom's Hardware. I'm joined by Associate Editor Les Pounder, Raspberry Pi expert Ash Puckett, and our very special guest, Brian Corteil, who many of you have seen on the show before, who does amazing projects. And he's working on a new one today. Brian, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you.
So, what is the latest project that you're working on right now?
So I'm converting hopefully converting a Pi top laptop version 3. Let me just grab. Well, it's the big green thing sitting behind me. So the I can get that so it can be seen and not fall over. So in this space here, we'd normally sit a Pi 3, and since the introduction of the thing, the Pi 3 feels really slow, and this has just really been sitting gathering dust, and I wanted to be able to update it. So I tried various ways of trying to fit a Pi 4. I should have one somewhere sitting here. Where is it?
Nice t-shirt.
Oh, cheers, thank you. Somewhere I'll have a Pi 4. No, I'm fitting it. Oh, I did have a Pi 4. So the problem with let's grab the Pi 3. Is that if you try to fit the that way, the Pi 4 in this area, it actually clashes with the lid, and you're unable to close the lid because this lid slides all the way up. Sorry, I don't know if you said the keyboard slides up thing, and
yeah.
So my thoughts was that I could make a carrier board for the compute module, the Pi 4. I'm just going to put this down because it's quite heavy, and right, there's another going to fit where the Pi 4, the Pi 3 sits. The problem being is that it's actually fit. It will fit, but it's going to be like a bigger PC. So yeah, so it'd be a bigger PCB that I had to sit here, and I'm currently playing around with things. What I've done, just as a proof of concept, is that where's my Pi 4? Of course, it's here. And done a proof of concept just to see if it would work. So I just got to make sure that this fits in the right place. So this has been the thing. I should be able to have a separate. Let me just change it to a different camera and grab this. So, sorry, bear with me. I'm just going to.
Wow.
So what you can see is that at the moment I've got some leads plugging into the into sort of this expander from the Pi top. This is just the I2C. The I2C bus.
Yeah.
And then this camera's not so great on close up. Is that I've bodged a couple of wires on there to take the power off the thing. This plug here is for. So I'm just going to put the camera down. So part of the original setup of the thing is that it has this bridge that's a heatsink, and then has this like the micro little connector that I was just showing you, where I've bodged some wires on, and then it goes over to the 40-pin header of your Raspberry Pi thing. And this white cables, just a proof of concept. It uses one of the grounds to detect whether there's a board plugged in, so it doesn't power up if there isn't. And this wire just bodges that to bypass that feature. On this one, I don't know if it's going to show. Basically, can you see this gold wire here?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of magnetic, where they call it magnetic wire. It's wire that you use for making transformers, but it's actually solderable, and it's really good to go into really fine connections. And that's taking that pin that comes back from the Pi, and it's putting it down to earth, so to switch on, so the laptop will switch on. Which, with that in place, I can boot. So as you can see, there's a green LED come on, so the hub is powered up.
Yeah.
And on my belly, you can see the Raspberry Pi 4 is now booting.
Nice.
So this is really just a proof of concept to prove that a Pi 4 would be able to boot up before going to the trouble of building a thing. And
Brian, do you get any power issues with the Pi top laptop powering the Pi 4?
No, and I've got a ridiculously long piece of cable on there for sort of testing. So I'll put this first one, and then I realised I needed just to extend it a little bit.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem to be any issues. And reading on the forums and stuff like that, it's supposed to be able to put a 3 amp power, 3 amp supply out from the laptop.
Well, that's plenty for a Pi 4. I mean, a Pi 4 at idle will pull comfortably about an amp, comfortably just sat there doing now.
So if you look now, you can see. I'll move it down so it doesn't reflect my super bright lights. You can see it's actually booted into the Pi top OS, and because you can see the green battery light, it does actually mean that it's communicating with the hub. When I first tried it, I didn't have the the relevant link in, and that wasn't displayed. And also, even through this setup, it's saying if the sound's set to HDMI, it will actually there's one of the Pi top speakers. That actually works as well, which. I haven't got a demo on that, but yeah, I'm saying that's it. So the whole point I'm trying to do this is to be as least destructive as possible to make an almost plug and play solution, apart from having to solder the 3 cables. If I was available, if I was able to get the plug that sits on top of here, I would be able to make a little PCB, and it wouldn't even be invasive. But alas, I don't think that's going to be possible. So that's the setup at the moment. The plan is to have a PCB that's going to fit almost all in this area.
Yeah,
and it will replicate the USB ports. Possibly it'd be one stack would be USB 3. I'm not. It depends on how complex it is actually to get the hub to work for that. There's not a lot of information about the hub that the foundation used in their schematic on the Raspberry Pi 4, and it should be with the I/O board for the compute module to be able to get USB 2 up and running, and that will the thing. If I can't get the USB thing, the plans could be to break out the PCI port, and then that would allow the use of sort of like a storage to be used instead of USB 3. So, but I think I'm just going to put this back.
It's interesting about having a Raspberry Pi laptop. I mean, you've got the new model of the Pi top. I've got an old model, the version 1 Pi top laptop, which lasts slightly. Well, I say slightly. It's a very chunky laptop. It's got a big wedge to it, like the Raspad. I've got it to one side for a reference here. So that's the side of it. And see how thick it is? The Raspberry Pi sits inside of this.
Yeah.
And if I, there you go.
I have a question about your setup, Brian. Where you've got it set up with the Pi 4 as proof of concept, is it running a Pi top instance of Raspberry Pi OS or just regular Raspberry Pi OS?
Yeah, it is the Pi top instance currently. So it's their latest one. You can download it directly from their website if you want to play with it. It's pretty irrelevant unless you're using it with Pi top hardware.
Yeah.
Could you just use vanilla Raspberry Pi OS?
Yes, you can do. There is packages out there too for the control of the hubs and stuff like that as well. So yeah, so it is possible. You think so? Yeah, as saying that there is some like the thing. I just wanted to prove it on a Pi 4. Just before I went to sort of like the trouble, sort of like going further down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Just design a PCB that can't even run an OS.
Yeah. It's going to be quite a large PCB, so it will end up being quite expensive, and it may, and I may have to source the components sort of like in more than singles. So it could sort of like start to run away with costs. But I know sort of like plenty of people who want to do this conversion, and I'm hoping that I can produce something that other people will be able to replicate. If I can get the instructions, schematics, and the circuit board design up, but I want to prove it before I start that process. Part of the other process is that I have actually purchased an I/O board with a compute module, and so I trying a couple of different sort of like USB 3 cards to see if I can find a chip that I can actually work with and program and to add on. So it's sort of like it's slowly making process. I think, and the same because it does make it easier that the foundation releases schematics which are available for downloading. Takes some of the guesswork out, but trying to fit all that circuitry and everything else into such a small space, and there's actually not a lot of room underneath the compute module. So once that goes into place, that actually takes up a lot of the PCB. That's why I'm going to have to expand it out past to like the standard Raspberry Pi size. And thing, yeah, I don't know what else to say or show.
Okay. So, have you noticed have you tested the battery life with the Raspberry Pi 4?
I haven't tested it, but it used to last when it was on a Pi 3 for about 3 or 4 hours, if not longer, depending on what was done. I used to take it along to Raspberry Pi jams and stuff like that, and you had it set up just to display at sort of like a little information board or for general hacking. So, you know, it's a nice piece of kit, and it's really sad that it's not being being used.
Yeah, it is very sad. We had someone from PyTop on the show several months ago, right? And they were talking a lot about the kit, the PyTop 4, where you can use it to build robots and whatever. But it's a shame because that they haven't updated the original PyTop laptop, because it seems there's a great demand for that. Now, I should point out somewhere in one of my drawers here, I have a CrowPi 2, which is another Raspberry Pi laptop, although the keyboard on it is really not good. I mean, it's good for experimentation because it's got, you take off the keyboard and underneath there are all of these little sensors and GPIOs and whatever, which is definitely cute, but as a functional laptop, it's not fantastic. So I think there's great there's a great gap in the market for somebody to come out with like a really good quality Raspberry Pi laptop that runs on 4.
Oh, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Raspberry Pi 400 from last year.
Yeah.
That form factor and the actual PCB inside is ideal for a small Pi laptop.
Yeah.
And I know nothing about the roadmap or the future, but my guess is we're heading towards a Pi laptop officially. That's my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that. I would also love to see somebody in the community, and I haven't seen this yet, but maybe someone has done it, take like an old ThinkPad or something and hollow it out and turn that into a Raspberry Pi laptop. No?
Maybe if it's
No, we
broken.
can't hollow out laptop. Oh. ThinkPads never die.
They never die. There's too many components to replace.
This is true. I mean, if you could get it to work with the battery in there, and you could get it to work with the keyboard, I don't know, and the screen, yeah, that's a lot to ask. But this is really impressive, Brian, because I think a lot of people who own, and I know a lot of schools bought this too, right? Who own the Pi Top are gonna want to be running it at Pi 4 speeds. So that's really impressive. So speaking of new boards, Les, you have been using a new board called the Tofu. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a tofu that I actually like. I don't like real tofu, but this board I like. So I'm going to go to overhead camera so you can see what's going on. You can see the mess of my desk as well. Welcome to my desk. Slap bang in the center is Tofu. So it's an industrial Raspberry Pi compute module 4 carrier board. So it retails for about $110, and it's made in Switzerland, if I remember correctly. As you can see, compute module 4, slap bang right there. And we've got ports all around the side. So we have got, fantastically, a full 40-pin GPIO, Raspberry Pi GPIO. I still need to test that. Gigabit Ethernet, USB 2, which is unfortunate, but it's better than nothing. Power inputs are provided via a DC jack, and it's between, I think it's 7.5 volts and 28 volts. That was a good guess for 7.5 volts. There we go. Also got a second input here with a plug connection. A camera and display port here. It's a smaller connection, smaller ribbon cables. And as you can see, I've been testing the official camera with it today. HDMI, full size, and another USB port. USB-C, which can be used for programming the board, so flashing the eMMC of the Compute Module 4 if you've got that model. Also got micro SD card. So on the whole, you look at it here and you go, yep, that looks like a nice tidy little board. It's not too big. I mean, here's Raspberry Pi 4 for scale. It's a little bit bigger, but not too much. It's a lot smaller than the Compute Module 4's I/O board officially. That's massive. And it just looks a bit, okay, it's a board, it looks cool. It's just a bit bigger than that. But what else has it got? Well, flip it over. And we've got an M.2 slot here, and I believe it's a B key. Yes, it is. There we go. And in there, I've got 256 gig SSD NVMe hard drive. And that is booting Raspberry Pi's OS. Really easy to install. I just flashed the eMMC, and then all of a sudden I put the drive in, flashed it over with the SD card copier, and away I went. It just booted. Really good. It's actually the drive I use with the Pioneera, which I'm also testing as well. Lovely little board. Same thing, has a boot on the bottom. So this is industrial applications. It's there. It's not there to be a server application or to be embedded in your home doing file management stuff. You could do if you wish, but you're limited to USB 2 speeds. It's more of an industrial application, so you embed it into an industrial project and build something cool with it. So I'm going to be testing it this week, testing the GPIO, file transfer speeds, networking speeds, that sort of thing, for a future review. But on the whole, it looks like a really nice piece of kit.
Well, what cool thing are you going to make with it?
I have no idea. I'll make something cool somewhere. I'll probably have... I mean, my current fascination is messing around with the camera, hence the camera's attached, making animations, that sort of thing. So I'm going to play around with that.
I think Brian would use it to make an even bigger cyber deck.
Oh yeah, it would be a good starting point.
Yeah, well, I think it would be good for a cyber deck or something like that. So Ash, you have been using Raspberry Pi lately to find ways to help with your cooking.
Yeah, I wanted
Correct.
to make cooking a little bit easier, and I thought that putting all of my recipes in one place would be a good way to start with that. So what I wanted to do was use a Raspberry Pi 4 inside of my Raspad 3 to operate as a recipe management system, thinking the touchscreen would be useful. It is a chunky device. Les might have his on hand. Mine is in pieces right now because things did not go as planned. There you go. But it's chunky and it sits upright, so having a touchscreen with all your recipes in one place seems like just something useful to have around the house. So I was looking for a few options, and there are several open source recipe management systems that work with Linux, but just because it works with Linux doesn't mean it's going to run on the Pi. But I wanted to list off a few in case you wanted to look into this, if it's up your alley. One that I considered was called Gourmet Recipe Manager. Another one is called Any Meal, and another one was called K Recipes. But what I landed on last, before my Raspberry Pi bit the dust this morning, is one called Gnome Recipes. And the reason I like this one is because it was already in the repository for Manjaro. So I had a Raspberry Pi 4 set up with Manjaro, and all I had to do was click it to install, which is a lot easier than trying to, dig through GitHub repositories and set everything up with dependencies. It was just click and go. So what I'll do right now is show you guys a little bit about it and tell you how it works. You can find the more about it on their website first. Let me give you this address just in case you want to pull it up yourself. It's at https://gitlab.gnome.org/gnome/recipes. And as I said before, it's a recipe management application. It compiles all of your recipes into one place. There's a really cool option to add pictures, and it looks really good when you have pictures, I think. You can view recipes that other people have created. You can use the recipes that you have in your database and other ones to help build a shopping list. It just pulls the ingredients you need and helps you keep up with what you need to get. Like I said earlier, I think this system would be ideal for a touchscreen, but it would also be really cool to set it up with something like voice commands, maybe with something like Minecraft to access and load recipes. That way you don't have to worry about getting your screen dirty. Like I said earlier as well, I was using Manjaro to get my hands on it. I'm not sure if it's available in the official Raspberry Pi OS repository. You guys may want to check on that to see if it is there, but it's for sure available in the Manjaro ARM instance. And I don't have a demo today because, like I said earlier, I had some technical difficulties, but there are a few screenshots from the official website. Definitely check it out and see if it's something that you want to use in your kitchen. Personally, I really want to get this set up because I like having everything in one place. It just saves you from opening up too many books and getting grease on pages when you don't want your recipes to be greasy. What do you guys think? Do you think you'd use something like this in your kitchen?
Yes, I would
Yes.
install it on this. So
Yeah.
this here is a case called the Smarty Pi
Ooh.
that I've had for a while, and it uses the official Raspberry Pi 7-inch display, and it just puts it in a really nice form factor where you can easily mount it and use it as, we used to call back in the old days, an internet appliance. I don't know if people remember those, but you'd put it somewhere and you could use it. The other thing, and I haven't really hooked it up, is you can actually put a fan on the back. It comes with a fan, which is kind of hard, and was kind of hard for me to attach. And you can also access the GPIO back here. So I think you're showing me that reminded me of, like, this is a great use case for creating something with a case like the Smarty Pi. Now, one thing that's been that is something that we're still hoping for some improvement from is the resolution of the official screen. And that's something that we talked about with Evan Upton a few weeks ago, that this screen is one of the older parts. And right now, I think it's 800 by 480. So for that web page, you'd have to be fairly zoomed out, or for that app, you'd have to be fairly zoomed out. So it would be better to have, to have either a bigger screen or a higher res screen or both. But this isn't a bad situation for you to have something like this in your kitchen. Just don't put it next to the sink where you might splash water on the pie. But that's a good a good use case for something like this. I mean, another use case is I would love to use this as just like a telepresence station. I kind of had this idea. I'm just going to set this up on my desk somewhere or near me or whatever, and then maybe I could put it here on top of my 3D printer that's in the corner over here, like looking down at me, and then my coworkers can come and sort of, peer in on me at any time, although that might be a little creepy. But that's been a possibility. So,
you can have them knock first. It can play a knock sound, and you can choose to open the door and let them in or not.
That's an interesting thought. Something else I wanted to show today, because it's something that I've only discovered recently. By the way, hi to our audience, John, who says he would use it, and Gaming Zone Gazo, and Sakib, who says, hey. I have a question for the audience who's watching and for everyone here. I'm curious what you would do with this latest thing that I'm showing. I'm curious what Brian would do with it. So let me share my screen and show you something. So I have just recently installed Raspberry Pi Desktop. Now, this is something that allows you download it as an ISO, and it allows you to run Raspberry Pi OS on your PC. You can run it in a virtual machine, or you can actually install it on your PC, like you would install another Linux. So let me show you. So here I have it installed in Oracle VirtualBox, which is a free install. One thing I learned through a bunch of attempts is that you need to set up here. I think this is in advanced. You have to set up in the processor here. You have to make sure that you enable. You have to enable the virtualization, or else it doesn't properly install. But I have it properly installed, so you'll see that what happens here is, it took me maybe 5 minutes to install once I figured that out. It's really just Debian. But you're going to get, after it boots up, you're going to get the entire Raspberry Pi OS desktop. So my question to everybody here, the audience, and starting with Brian, is, would you find a use for having Raspberry Pi OS running in a virtual box, or is that kind of a waste of time? Because anytime you want, you can just take a regular Raspberry Pi, burn a new micro SD card, and if you really want to get to it from your PC, you can use VNC, which is what I do all the time. So, Brian, would you find a use for this?
I have loaded it onto a virtual machine in the past, just to have something for trying out code inside the Raspberry Pi thing. But I've actually used it to as the OS on one of my home servers. So I've got an old HP Q type home server that I've had for years. Windows just knock it flat on the floor. So I found that the Raspberry Pi iOS was a good choice because I know the command line commands and everything else for the Raspberry Pi iOS. So I've used it and I find it fine.
Interesting. So one of our viewers, Will, says, I run this in a virtual and use it for Pi server. Okay. Not bad. Vlad says, I don't know anything about Raspberry Pi or what it's capable of, but it sounds interesting. We'll definitely try it out in a VM.
You're at the right podcast to learn.
Yes.
Definitely, yeah.
John says, yes, I use a VM before I flash my Pis, 6 of them. So it is a way to test out the OS. I think for those who were wanting to get into Pi, I don't think this is the best introduction to it. I mean, it's okay. You'll see what the operating system looks like, but the fun for me of Raspberry Pi is using the GPIOs and using hats, and this doesn't simulate that in any way. It's just the operating system. So,
Abram,
yeah,
there is actually a way with Raspberry Pi OS on a desktop on your x86 machine to connect to a real Raspberry Pi over USB, so like a Pi Zero, and using Pi GPIO pin library, connect to that Pi and use the hats and the GPIO on that on your laptop.
Wow.
That's
It
cool.
was done by Ben Nuttall did it a few years ago. He wrote a blog post on it, and I've done a tutorial on it many eons ago. And you can control the pins, input and output, just as if you were sat writing a Python project on your Raspberry Pi, but it's
That's
really on a
awesome.
laptop. It's
Cool.
cool.
Fascinating. I still don't necessarily see why you wouldn't just remote control the Pi, but I like doing things in VM, so I found this fascinating. Anyway,
It would be useful to, if you wanted to test something software-wise and you didn't want to go through seeing what all you needed to run through to get it set up without having to reformat a SD card. Like, you can test software without all of that hassle. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I also think the VM is probably running on a good PC is probably a bit faster than at least a low-end Pi. It may be.
Yeah.
I don't know how it stacks up to, say, a Pi 4 because I haven't benchmarked it, but I'm sure this is faster than a Pi Zero.
It's remarkably quick. I used it on an X61 ThinkPad, and it was remarkably quick even then. About 2-3 years ago, I used it. It ran YouTube really well, no drop frames. Admittedly, the resolution of the screen is poor compared to today's standards, but it runs quite well.
Yep. Well, very cool. Thanks to everyone for their feedback, and thank you so much, Brian, for joining us today.
No problem.
It's a privilege to have you as always, and we're really eager to see where your project goes. As always, we are here Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. UK time, 2:30 p.m. Eastern, and we will see everybody next week. Bye, everyone.